When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had
rich habits. Let's go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Master Keys podcast. This is season 2, episode 21. Thanks so much for tuning in. Wanted to say right off the hop, I'm Chandler Halliburton.
I'm Neal and
And all of you listeners out there, only 40% of you hit the like, subscribe button, whatever it is. You don't do it. Just do it for us, please. It helps. It gets more people, sends more traffic, and we're trying to grow this community. So please, like, subscribe, turn on the alert thing, let you know when it's on there, and check out our other episodes. You can go through past episodes. I'm doing the whole promo.
Chandler's doing the
talking
whole
and everything.
promo. He wants the like thing. He wants the alert thing. The subscribe thing would be nice too. But no, in all seriousness,
Also, would it kill you to call?
We do really appreciate you guys all listening. I also want to say I've said it a few times on our episodes, like, shoot us a message and let us know what you think. A bunch of you have done that. You've said, hey, it'd be cool if you guys did this, or it'd be an improvement if you did that. So keep doing that. Really, really appreciate it. We're trying to make this better. But yeah, again, like Chandler said, there is only 40% are subscribed. So it would be nice if you want to hear more of our stuff, you think you're going to check it out, subscribe, please. Hit that subscribe thing. And we'd be very, very happy.
Yeah, we got a really good back catalog too. Some of you have asked for content. I'm like, man, you didn't look through our content. We got that in a previous episode. Exactly. But today,
episode 21,
we are going to speak with Ryan, who is the CEO and founder of Unreserved. It may surprise you to know, we've talked about this a lot. We've talked about the open bidding, transparency, auctions for real estate, whatever you want to call it. We've talked a lot about it. It surprised me to find out that there's a company actively doing this, and not in the middle of nowhere. They're doing it in Ottawa, Sudbury, getting into Toronto as well. In fact, in talking with Ryan, we discovered they've got a staff of, what was it?
About 150 people. They've done about 200 homes in the last 10 months. They just started 10 months
200
ago.
homes.
They've already done 200 homes, so about 170 million in transactions, and they're just growing. Like, they just opened in Sudbury
2 weeks ago, he said?
2 weeks ago, and he's already got 7 listings. So it's coming on hot. These guys are a little bit different. So this is more of like an eBay style, privately owned, operate business. The last company we had on open was looking to partner with CREA and add to the current system with their website, realtor.ca. Ryan's company is not doing that. They're creating their own business and their own platform where buyers and sellers can transact properties. And their intention is to make it a lot smoother, a lot more transparent, and a lot more trustworthy, kind of remove a lot of, I guess, the untrustworthiness that this industry has carried and kind of acquired over time, just due to...
Yeah, not fairly, but sure.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily fairly, but I feel like every time there's been one bad incident, it's been blown out of the water, and that story gets told so many times, and then everyone has this weird feeling about the industry. So again, I think Ryan was saying he'll tell his story when he comes on, but he was going through a transaction, and he didn't love how it felt, and so he ended up taking his experience from bidding and selling stuff online through his previous company, which has done amazingly and done an IPO with, and then he's going to bring that to the housing market. And so they're doing that now. They're 10 months in. They're growing quickly. So
yeah, I think people are going to be interested in this because he's got a cool story where he actually started a major car auction company, took that to IPO, had a home buying experience that he didn't entirely love, and then revolutionized and launched this thing not even 12 months ago. We're talking July 2021. And this is going to matter to buyers out there who are wondering what this experience could be like when it comes to our market here, because it is going to come to our market here. And what are the advantages of sellers? We were really surprised here. Actually, he came to this from a selling side. I misspoke there. I said he was a buyer, but he had a selling experience that he thought could have done better. So we've looked at this predominantly from a buyer side. We're going to talk a lot about it from a seller side, the programs he's offering, and all this stuff. It's pretty awesome.
If nothing else, and this does grow in some capacity, think about how fun it is going to be able to sit at work and watch bids go by on houses. Right now,
I talk about that. Yeah,
it's fun to watch Viewpoint. Everyone likes to watch, like, what's that going to firm up for? What's that going to firm up for? Now you can just watch the bid as it goes up. Maybe just throw one in on your lunch hour. It's going to be a little bit fun.
Instant data too, because we see things go conditional. It's like, oh man, I don't know how that affects my value of my property or what I might bid on this property that's going to be accepting offers in a couple days. Well, now you'll know instantaneously, because similar situation. The inspections are already provided, or you have an opportunity to do your inspection. Your pre-approvals have to be provided up front. So when you bid and you win, boom, that house is yours in that moment.
They even have a program on top of this, which I found interesting, where you're going to get some cash back. So make sure to listen all the way through. Ryan explains everything, and he talks to you about how you can get some cash back on your buy, which could be as much as like $20,000, $30,000 back on closing day.
Yeah, depending
purchasing
on
a
the price
home.
point.
So
It's a game changer. Realtors, you'll want to take note. Buyers, sellers, you'll want to check into this. Unreserved is the company, unreserved.com. You can check it out a little bit, but listen first, subscribe, like, follow, all that.
here it is.
All right, so let's dive right into it. Neal, do you want to introduce our guest today?
Yeah, so our guest today is Ryan. He's coming on from Unreserved. He's the founder and CEO. Unreserved reached out to us after we did some work with Open, and they have a similar but different model, and they're starting out of Ontario. So we want to dive into it and chat about it and find out all the nitty gritties.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I'm super excited about, and as mentioned to you before we came on air, that I think this is the future of our industry. Obviously, first and foremost, we are real estate agents. That's how we've made our living. So do you want to just dive in and introduce yourself and maybe give us a little background of how your company came to be? Because I'm super pumped that you guys are also Canadian.
Oh, right on. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be on here and talk about Unreserved. How did we come to be? I guess in 2016, I started an online car auction, and we were selling cars dealer to dealer. So traditionally, dealers would ship cars to physical car auctions, and there was transportation costs and storage costs at the auctions, and relatively higher auction fees. And we came out with this platform where we would send in data capture reps to shoot the cars in dealers' yards, and they would be sold online. And it really streamlined the process. And we became Canada's largest digital car auction. E-Block.
Is that still in operation?
Yeah.
What's that? Just out of curiosity.
E-Block. We IPO'd in November, north of $1 billion. And prior to IPO, I had sold my house, and I was like, you know what? I wish I could auction this off. And I thought about it,
Right.
and I regretted after. I just said, look, I really felt if we would have ran an auction process, it would have yielded very similar results, but a lot more streamlined. And that was before COVID, before everything went crazy. And in 2020, when everything was going crazy, I couldn't get this real estate auction out of my head, especially with, RICO getting slammed with consumer complaints and whatnot. So, with E-Block IPOing, I had an opportunity to sell a large block of my shares, and I called up one of the most successful real estate agents in Ottawa, and I said, look, I want to go buy 20 houses just to auction them off. And she thought I was crazy.
She was like, I'll do it.
Yeah,
It's like, you crazy bastard, I'll take those 20 deals.
And
Let's go shopping.
And so the deal was that she would join, right, and help get this auction started. And so we went out and in the heat of blind bidding in March 2021 and started buying houses. And it was probably the best thing for me to experience as a buyer, putting myself in a buyer's shoes. And, I won houses by $2,500. I once lost a house over $500. But there was other times where I got blown out of the water, and I'm sure that there's other times where I overpaid as well. Actually, I'm positive I overpaid on several. And so when it came time to launch, the market, as it tends to do in summers, had really had cooled, to say the least. And the
Supply was up.
Yeah.
Buyer apathy, people going away to the cottage. Yep.
Exactly. And so it was end of July, and our first house was Edenwild in Stittsville. And we had bought it for $721, and I'm talking to the agent who bought it through, and she's like, yeah, it's going to pull high sixes. And we're like, okay, well, it's a cost. Bye-bye. We're gonna lose this,
Yeah.
but
R&D,
that's the market,
yeah.
right? And the first one sold for $737.5. We beat what we had paid in what I felt was a hotter market, and it kind of proved the concept. And the reason we went and bought these houses was I'm like, nobody's gonna trust us auctioning off their largest their net worth, their entire net worth with us,
Yeah.
without us at least having a bit of a case study done. And what happened when we sold that house, our phone started blowing up from sellers wanting to meet with us, wanting to come appraise their properties. And one of the things that we offered at the time was a price guarantee, you know, saying, look, let's auction your house off unreserved, like no reserve, and we're going to guarantee you a price. And we definitely did not have all the answers, but we were committed to, you know, really beta testing this. And so the next one
you would top them up. Yeah.
Yeah. So exactly. So if we guaranteed a seller, this next one, this house number 2 that we sold, we guaranteed the seller $560, and half an hour before the auction ended, it was in the high 4s. You know, and I'll never forget this. I'm watching this and I'm going. I'm all in on this company again, you know, and about all these houses, and this may not work, you know, and you have every doubt going through your mind, and it ended up selling for $567.5, which was a little. We knew we'd stepped up on the appraisal. That was really tight, you know, but the seller was super happy, the buyer was super happy, and it felt we were off to the races after that. And what happened was a lot of my own houses got pushed to the back of the bus because sellers were wanting to use us, and it was really exciting. And you know, obviously, it was challenging mitigating all the pushback from the real estate agents and the community. You know, and we heard everything under the sun. What they're telling their clients, why not to use us and stuff. So that was definitely challenging, and you know what? To be honest, it still is. But
let me get some. Let me clarify just a couple things. So this is all in Ottawa,
correct?
At that point
yeah.
in time, and was you had an independent platform that you were somehow effectively running parallel to your local MLS system?
So
it was on MLS.
Great question. So we would the sellers would post their house up via mirror posting, okay, on MLS, and we'd say accepting offers on this date, but the offers were being run on the auction site.
Okay.
Through Unreserved.
So people would then still go bid through an unreserved website that at that time was really in its infancy, and like you said, you were kind of figuring it out on the fly.
Exactly.
And very cool.
So buyers would submit their pre-approvals, or agents would submit their pre-approvals on behalf of their buyers, and we'd verify them in the system, and we'd have these set auction dates, and you know, the bidding would all generally happen in the last 20 minutes of an auction. You know, it was
just like eBay, man, just like eBay.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
Yeah. I got 2 questions for you. Did you guys end up keeping that program where you're giving a guaranteed price point? Are you offering that still as an option?
Great question. In January, when prices were doing this, and we were exceeding our reserves by like 100,000, 150,000 in some cases, I go, why are we having this debate with customers? And you know, we're chasing a market here which is a little bit detached from reality. So we just said, look, let's set a reserve that you're going to be happy with, rather than engage in these debates with consumers, because the consumers weren't wrong in saying, hey, this one just sold for $760. I want $760. We're like, yep, let's list it. And you know, a week later it was higher anyways. And and so that was, you know, there were some that you know, in March wanted guarantees, and we were giving them guarantees, and we actually took it on the chin on a few properties, but where we'd be like, oh, you know what, townhomes dropped 50,000-60,000 overnight, and and so we, you know, one townhouse, you know, in Stittsville, we, you know, the first loss was your best loss. We wrote the seller a check for $20,000.
And so to give that guaranteed price, what were you doing? Getting an appraisal done and then just basing it off of that?
Right. So when we're meeting with the sellers, we're like, look, here's what we'll guarantee you in the auction. And the sellers might say, you know what, we want more than that. And we're like, well, we'll take the listing if they're still reasonable, and we'll run it with a reserve. But right now we're back giving guarantees. There's a lot of sellers that have purchased homes that really need to sell. And so that guarantee is everything right now. Our guarantees obviously are a little more conservative than they would have been back in February or March. But, we're still, 3 weeks ago, we had our biggest week ever. And
Wow. I feel like that would be super tough to do with the market changing so fast. Like you said, townhomes overnight dropped 50 grand. So how can you give a guarantee? But my first question, I think something I just want to pedal back a little bit, is just like, what is the process for a seller? So unreserved, like we said, it's similar to open in some ways, but very different in a lot of other ways. Kind of what would be like your step-by-step for somebody who's saying, I want to come to unreserved, and what's going to go through it? Because I was looking through your website, and some of them are like pre-inspected and stuff like that. Is that every home, or is that a choice? And then commissions?
Every home is pre-inspected. And so when we go and especially if we're giving a seller a guarantee, that guarantee is pending us doing an inspection on the property and making, but then we stand behind every inspection with a 1-year warranty. Wow. And when we were selling cars online, when we were selling all these cars online, we were shipping cars across the country and standing behind every car that we sold. And when you break it down, a house has a lot less moving parts than a car. And
that's why insurance is cheaper on a house.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so we're like, this makes no sense this is a no-brainer for us to stand behind these. And, we just put a new furnace in for one buyer recently. And it's just that extra peace of mind where...
it's curious to me that you came at this from a seller standpoint. Like, you went through the selling experience yourself and you found some level of dissatisfaction. And obviously you had the experience from car auctions. The people most keen on this transparency of the offer process tends to be buyers. So so you're coming at it from a different angle. That's curious to me. What are you trying to address through this alternative model?
So how I started thinking about it, correct, was through a seller's lens, and I'll tell the story quickly. I felt my home was worth $1.5 million. The agent, a friend of mine, came in and said, "Let's list it at 1.8." We sold it over a year later at 1.54, and I'm like, if there would have been somebody who would have guaranteed me, 1.45, 1.4, and said, look, we're going to guarantee X, we're going to auction this off, it probably would have sold for 1.6 in the first couple weeks, because all the showings, all the excitement happened when that house first came on the market. And so that was my experience from a seller's perspective, but. When we built eBlock, everything was built from a buyer's perspective, and when we did that, the sellers got good results and consistent results. And so when I went out and bought all those houses, and I was looking at how I felt, how broken it was from a buyer's perspective, I felt we were solving a lot of those problems, and I knew over time that if we continue to be advocates for the buyers and really make sure that the buyer experience is second to nothing, sellers will naturally be the biggest beneficiaries.
Yeah, if the buyers go there, the sellers are going to want to be there. Can you unpack that a bit? I mean, you're saying all the problems buyers face. Is that primarily you just feel with the transparency of the offer process?
So that is that's obviously probably the biggest one. And in a down market, the transparency isn't that much of a problem. But what we experienced over the last year or 2 years even was a total lack of transparency, but a total lack of fairness, And I've been there where I was asked, "Hey, do you want to up your offer?" And I was like, "You know what? No, I'm going to stay." And they'd be, "Congratulations, you won the house." And I was that close to bidding against myself. And if I was emotionally attached home buyer, when I wasn't, I was just trying not to lose my shirt on these. If I was an emotionally charged up home buyer and my wife was saying, you need to buy this,
You would have bid that up.
you know, I who's to say I wouldn't have went an extra 50 grand and bid against myself. But what's happening right now, and you know, everyone wants to talk about consumer protection, but there is no consumer protection for buyers in the sense where what's happening right now is bank appraisals are coming in less than what people paid, hundreds of thousands less than people paid. A friend of mine just told me a story about their neighbor sold their house for 1.9. The bank appraisal came in at 1.6. The buyer is forfeiting $100,000 deposit, and that seller is going to litigate with the buyer, and they're probably going to win because the case law is very, very strong.
So let's speak a little bit more about that, because in the traditional model, some of the buyer protections and the seller protections come by way of an agent. And certainly we've talked about this before, where sometimes as a buyer agent in this market, you kind of feel like you're a door opener and you're trying to give advice, but the data is moving so quickly that it becomes a case of, as you mentioned, like which buyer just wants it more,
Yeah.
which has the bigger pre-approval, which one has the strongest sentimental attachment to the property that's going to win out. So what representation exists in your model for sellers and for buyers, where you're not quite operating on the MLS, you are, but you aren't?
Yeah, what's a buyer receiving as well? They make their decision.
So what the buyers are seeing generally is, you know, they're seeing multiple buyers and they're all bidding within, you know, $2,500 of each other. And, you know, we'll have numerous scenarios where we'll have 5 unique bidders within $20,000, $30,000 of each other. And, you know, on a couple hundred houses sold now, we haven't had a case where one didn't meet the bank appraisal, you know? So I think that's a really good sample size for buyers. But with that said, the sellers have been really happy with the results. No, you know, and we'll be completely honest with sellers, saying, look, if you're listing and you're hoping for somebody to come in and bid 100 grand over the next offer, this isn't the platform for you. Okay, but if you want to sell your house and get consistent results, and we'll guarantee you this number, you know, and we're really happy with how many listings we're getting with that offering. And, you know, our fees are, we charge sellers 1% and we offer 2% directly to buyer agents or to buyers who buy directly.
Okay. So this is one of the things I wanted to ask you about, is your 2% buyer direct program and how that works. Because that's interesting to buyers. I don't doubt it.
Yeah, well, it was something that, you know, we didn't take lightly on, make the decision lightly. But when we launched last year, it was crazy. Almost 50% of the buyers were buying directly without any incentive. And a lot of that was...
How many? What percentage?
50% of the buyers were buying directly without any incentive. Like, we weren't paying them. There was no incentive for them to buy directly. You know,
they were just coming to your site, and
a lot of it was agents were saying, nope, I'm not bringing you there. And so numerous, a lot of times they're saying, nope, they're unregulated, go buy it yourself. And so what happened was, the new year, it was like, okay, we'd kind of budgeted for around 50% of people buying directly, and we were having a healthier margin on those. And agents were really getting in front of their clients. You know, now they weren't telling them, okay, you want to buy it, and so they were all agent represented. And when the market shifted, and we'd have houses up in the auction, and you know, we'd have, you know, X amount of pre-approved clients ready to bid, and all of a sudden we started having some failed auctions where there wasn't the level of engagement. People had bought houses while they were waiting on ours, and it was natural. And we said, okay, well, we have to make a decision right now. And it was, we felt there was a lot of clients being pushed in certain directions away from our properties. And so we just said, we're going to offer it to the agent or the buyers who buy directly. And it's been a tremendous success. But we still have a large percentage of agents buying on the platform. but then there's a lot of clients buying directly as well.
Do you think you guys will keep that program like in perpetuity, or do you think it's kind of a thing right now to try like you saying that? And I'm not like this is not an attack, but I feel like so you're trying to almost push out the agents because you want more direct buys, or what's the intent with that?
There's no financial incentive for us.
Yeah.
Okay, it makes no difference for us. We want to deliver results, and in a down market, when we had our record week two or 3 weeks ago, that 2% was used to bridge the gap between what the seller needed and what the buyers were willing to pay.
Yeah.
And so in a lot of cases. And so it's something where we are an auction company, and although we've openly embrace agents and welcome it, but there are customers coming to us directly, and there was a lot of agents where, and this was happening across the board, where a client would come to us and then a couple days later say, this agent is going to give me 1% back. So you know what I mean? So it was just, there was a lot of things happening, and we just said, look, we're agnostic. Yeah. It's either going to be the clients or the agents, but I do see how a lot of agents see it as an attack on them, which it was never meant to be. But it is showing the true cost of using a buyer agent.
Yeah, and I think people recognize that, and you guys are offering that same fee to an agent, and there's a lot of clients who would want to have their agent there regardless, and they understand they're going to make money from the process.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think all the data supports that. Push comes to shove, buyers far overwhelmingly go out and decide to have their own representation, at huge numbers. So I don't think that's going to change materially. You're effectively just giving them the option to or not, because it costs you the same regardless.
That's all it is.
Yeah. Can you explain, so just to backtrack, I mean, you had this idea just before the pandemic. When did you officially launch? Can you remind me of that? And how much transaction volume have you done so far? Tell us a little bit about that, where you're operating now, expansion plans, all that, the actual raw numbers here.
So we launched the third week of July in 2021. It was when we had our first auction. We'd been, putting the team together, buying houses, getting them. We actually bought a furniture company, because when you're charging 1% and then you got to pay $5,000 to stage a house, we didn't really have a margin to be to afford stagers. So we bought a furniture company, and so that's something that we're including with every listing right now is free staging. So we've done about 170 million in transactions now.
Wow.
So 170 million in effectively 1 year, coming up on 1 year?
Less than a year, yeah. It'll be a year at the end of July.
Predominantly Ottawa, but you're also expanding.
Yeah, so Toronto, Sudbury. We just went live in Sudbury, and 2 weeks ago we got 7 listings.
Wow.
In Sudbury, and so it's something that as much as buyers appreciate, sellers appreciate it as well.
Yeah.
And from my experience as a buyer, everyone wants to talk about blind bidding, how someone's going to overpay, but what nobody's talking about is how many times there's 4 or 5 bidders that are really close, and when you're able to put them into a transparent marketplace, it actually not only does it make for happier buyers, it also makes for happier sellers.
Yeah, because the implication is the buyers will have the transparency to make a free, informed decision. From a seller's perspective, you might actually get them to continue to push each other up in a little bit, in a genuine way, as opposed to perhaps the disingenuous example before, when someone said, hey, do you want to bid against yourself effectively?
100%.
Right. And we kind of touched on it before, but I just want to get the whole process down, Pat, because I think some people are going to be interested. So they want to work with you, and they sign on. So it's 3% plus HST for the sale. What is included within that? So you're saying there's a pre-inspection. Every single property is pre-inspected. Who's paying for that? kind of what's the process there? Then there's staging, photos. What all is included, and what do people expect to see from that?
Yeah, so when we went live, we were like, okay, we need to be full service. You know, the best agents out there are full service shops. The houses that I was buying were ones that didn't show well. You know, they weren't getting offers on offer day, and so that opened my eyes to okay, we need to be in the staging business. We need to be offering renovation services and stuff. And so we've got a full construction team, staging team. And so when we're going in, we're meeting with sellers. Then the next step, when they agree to list with us, we're introducing them to our interior design team, and then we're offering free staging services. And then, you know, we do a pre-inspection, so we'll address any issues that we find with that the inspector
Is the
finds.
inspection included?
That's all included, yeah.
Is this where you get into? I know you have kind of a two-tiered system. Is that part of like different options that buyers and sellers can select, or is that something totally different?
So it's generally so when the seller has a choice to do 1% only, okay, or do the 1 plus the 2. We have not yet had a seller. We had one seller recently where they were like, well, I don't want to offer anything to the agents. And I'm like, what's the reserve? 700,000. I said, okay, let's offer 2% to the buying agents and set the reserve at 715. Okay, and it ended up selling for over that anyways. You know, when you actually break it down, you know, we just set it up in a way where we highly recommend offering the 2%, you know.
And you're saying in your sample size so far, everyone has they've opted.
And
into
we'll
that.
go back and we'll show them bid history and say, look at, because you can see when clients are agent represented, you can see when clients aren't, and so imagine if this agent wasn't part of this auction, the bidding would have stopped here. You know, and they're like, okay, you know, when you actually, you know, people got to be careful. You know, it's great to be cognizant of fees, but when you're eating your nose to spite your face, it's not helpful, you know. And so, you know, if we're going to charge 1%, but then throw it out the back door because we didn't invite agents, we're not doing a service for our clients.
You're still losing.
Yeah.
So then I know I keep going back to it, but I really just want to try and hammer it. So then you have the inspection done. You have a renovation company now, you're saying, or a construction company that comes in, and then you obviously bill them for that. So people aren't just calling you for a free reno on their house.
So we'll actually do all the costs up front. Okay, so it's essentially an interest-free loan. You know, you say, look, you want to paint the house and put granite down, whatever. We'll do all that.
Cool.
We got great relationships with suppliers and whatnot, and so it's really helps. You know, it helps create that want. You know, when couples are coming through the home and it shows really well and it's beautifully staged,
makes all the difference.
It really helps. Have a successful auction date.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, no, 100%.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, looking where the market is, obviously, whether by accident or design, it was a great time to launch an auction-based platform during a market where this bidding process was happening anyway. With the market now cooling a little bit, how do you explain a situation to a seller why this could still be an advantageous method, even in the event of fewer offers? If we're headed that way, which it seems like we might be.
Yeah, so we're definitely in a correction, and when the market was crazy hot, we were losing. We were still getting. We were still happy with the amount of listings we were getting. However, you know, when we were up against an agent, and the agent would say, you know, why would you go transparently? You know, so what's going to stop someone from overpaying for your property? And, you know, sellers would be like, sometimes they choose us, sometimes they choose to go list with a brokerage and opt for blind bidding. And I can relate as a seller why you might want that. But so I always would say this, and I said this to our investors, in a down market, I feel we will thrive because there's always an abundance of listings. And when the market normalizes, and you look back in like 2016,
Regular
2017,
inventory levels.
2018, how many
Yeah.
listings were on MLS, and so as we become, more of a transactional marketplace, that, we kind of saw the market shift before anybody did.
Right, you
Because
could track the volume, the
we
actual,
weren't-
yeah.
We're like, what? Why didn't this townhouse sell? We could sell townhouses with our eyes closed. We watched them go from, base townhouses go from 800,000 to low sevens in a matter of a week. So it's kind of that real time market analysis, right? When you're seeing that happen, but we're still doing high volume of transactions. It's not at the market, but as the market comes down or normalizes again, we do feel really confident that we're going to continue to get more and more listings, and have a buying experience that buyers want.
So let's say, again, we go down to this buyer's market. Now you put the house up for auction, it doesn't sell. So now does it sit on the platform? What happens then? And so are you guys putting like a lockbox in the house? Kind of what's going on there?
Yeah, so we will run another process if we have to. We do have buy nows, just like eBay.
Yeah.
So instead of where you're trying to guess what it's gonna, you can actually go on, click buy now, and own the house.
Yeah.
On our site.
That's cool.
So
How does the buy
and
now option typically relate to the reserved price?
Becomes a reserve?
So if we have a failed process with a seller, and we'll go back to the seller and be
Revisit
like, look,
it.
do you
Right.
want to list the buy now at your reserve? Do you want to drop your reserve? And there's still that buy now, make an offer for 20, 30,000 less than the buy now. So we're still trying to, in an auction environment, we're still trying to generate an offer, but we've still, even on all the listings, on a couple hundred auctions now, we've only had 4 or 5 failed processes, so pretty, we're pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they did sell them. Yeah.
With that idea, the failed process, and not to harp on negatives, but what happens if, so I want to sell my house, I come to you guys, you stage up my house, we do some work on it, you give me a loan to do 20 grand worth of work. I don't know if there's a limit on the amount. We go to sell the house, doesn't hit the bid, isn't going to sell. What happened? And I'm like, I don't want to sell anymore, or I'm not in a position to sell anymore.
Good question. We
Okay.
have not had that happen yet, but in the event where we did $50,000 worth of work, and the buyer, the seller decided not to sell their house, they'd either have to pay us, but I guess we'd have to put a construction lien against the house and wait it out, wait it out like any other construction company would.
They're like, this house is so nice, I'm not leaving.
Is there a limit on the amount of work that can be done?
We've had we'll do a $50,000 interest-free loan, okay, for anybody who wants to do work. But we had recently a $90,000 job come through.
I guess the price points and cost of construction, it doesn't take that much to hit 90 grand, right? So
yeah, and we're like, look, if we do the X, Y, and Z, these are the results you're going to get. If we do.
So you're
these are the results you're going to get.
You're coming in as like a person that's just like this is the best way to market, make your home amazing.
100%.
Up to like 100 grand, which is a massive, not massive, but it could be a fair number of changes. So you're really, this is a different model. Like this is a very different model, I think, than a realtor would provide.
I've got a question for you. So you're giving this advice, right? So have you brought in, you got a big team now, and then you can speak to maybe how many people you've got on staff now. And I know you guys also just did a kind of fundraising effort. Have you enlisted, appraisers, maybe taken some realtors who are operating under a traditional model and brought them in-house, things like that?
Yeah, a great question. So our chairman of the board is Simon Dean. He was the former CEO of Royal LePage Canada. Rachel, who I went and bought those houses with initially, she's our VP of sales. We've got numerous other agents that have joined us in this market, in Sudbury, Toronto. And, we're constantly trying to attract talent, experienced talent, but those agents are honestly, they're coming in, they're hanging up their license. And
Right.
Yeah, so you're bringing in realtors? No way.
Yeah.
But they must be playing a key role in going out and saying, hey, listen, guys, this is what your house is worth now. If you do this work here for $30,000, I genuinely feel you could maybe get a $60,000. So it's like, $1 in, $2 out. Like, someone's got to be giving that advice and feeling really good about it. Yeah.
100%. We have analysts on the team, so when they're going in, and so our Rachel is she was a really strong listing agent, and so all day, and there's 3 or 4 in Ottawa right now, where all day they're just going to meeting with people and going over the appraisals that our analysts are doing. So we're doing this whole presentation saying, look, here's the comps. This is where we think you need to be based on the market today. This is where we'd set the reserve, and having those conversations with sellers. And then once we're getting the listing, then we're introducing them to the design team, and then having the conversation about what would make sense in the house. And some of them are, the paint might be 10 years old, it might be blue, pink, and stuff, and we're going in and changing it to white, and just bringing the place back to life.
So you did a $35 million raise recently. You've got about 150 staff. Is that what you said earlier?
Yeah, it would be about 150 employees between 100 in Ottawa, and then between Sudbury and Toronto. Easily 150 right now.
What do you feel is kind of the critical mass, and where are you trying to take this numbers wise, and what timeline?
So with right now, we're launching. We're focusing on the markets we're in, and building out the technology that'll help us scale. And this comes from the experience with the car auction. When we launched that, we had no business launching a car auction. We built a cool app to sell cars, but what happened when the car sold was the wheels fell off, because we had no transparent. We weren't handling titles, payment, arbitration, and so we were being fired by our customers. And so it was a series of miracles that we got the company to a $1 billion IPO. But it took us building an operating system that gave us transparency, that allowed us to scale. And so when we were starting this one, we were like, we need an operating system that everyone is rowing in the same direction. We have total transparency into every listing. And so we're actually taking it from that traditional brokerage model to the tech model, where our listing agents, the second they get it signed, they're just booked all day getting listings, and then there's a whole team supporting them through the staging, the renos, the photography, the marketing, everything, right? And there's great agents out there. The problem is it's really hard to scale one great agent, right?
It's incredibly difficult. Yeah.
And so like they can do 20, 30 transactions a year and burn the candle at both ends. But what we're trying to do is yes, we need that human element, that human touch, but we're really trying to set it up for success and scalability through technology.
Streamline.
To presumably go cross country at
exactly
least here in Canada.
Yeah.
Do your projections make sense, like on the business side for your business, like charging 1% with that much back end?
So the 1%, we're definitely not making money. It's about market share. Every house we sell, we're solving more problems for the next house we sell. The marketplace is getting a little bit stronger. There are levers that we can pull in the future to help increase margin. One thing that we didn't really we got in the furniture business kind of by default, and just because we needed staging. But any given time we'll have 50 houses ready to stage, and so it's just millions and millions of dollars worth of furniture out. But we're now selling about 400,000 in furniture a month, because it's.
I was going to say those businesses are probably growing on their own too.
It was one of those things where we kind of tripped over because we got all these showings, and then people, even if they aren't buying the house, are like, where is this furniture from? You know,
Like, I'll take the ottoman. Not so much the house, but I'll take the ottoman.
He's going to be on in a year with a giant furniture company. So it all started with a house bidding company. We found that the furniture was more profitable.
So now the actual experience here as a seller, are the sellers sort of sitting there like, and then they're just watching the numbers come in? How do the sellers kind of interact with the platform usually?
So they're literally popping popcorn, you know, and watching these auctions, and you know, for the most part, it's been overwhelmingly positive, you know. And this is hilarious. We had a developer join us from Shopify, brilliant guy, and he's like, I have a rental, and the tenant just left, and I'm about to rent it again, and I just said, sell it. You need to sell it now. The market's going to come off. And, you know, part of me, I'm in a bit of a conflict because I'm trying to get inventory for the auction. But I'm genuinely telling him, I'm like, honestly, I think the market's at an all-time high here.
Oh, now's the time to sell.
And so he agrees to list it with us. And it was in Toronto, and BlogTO picked it up saying, oh, wow, there's beautiful condos up. And, you know, we didn't even expect them to pick that up. But, you know, from his perspective, it was so stressful because, you know, 20 minutes were, you know, 50,000 under the reserve price, right? And we ended up beating the reserve by 50 grand. So he, you know, it was that roller coaster ride for a seller. And obviously he's crazy happy, but he's just like, man, I wish I didn't have to experience all that anxiety. But
I'm telling you, you've got a streaming show, or at least a YouTube show of some type there, just that content. Like, I'm thinking, like, my kids who watch other people play video games, you could be like, and now we jump to like Carl in Sudbury and just show the 20 minutes of the bid and just put a camera on that person. That would be must-see TV. Like, people would watch that stuff. I guarantee it.
You know what? It's so funny you mentioned that.
Everyone's already been watching the auction.
Right. Yeah. We had a seller last night. You know, his reserve was $700,000 and it pulled $680 in the auction, and it's all brand new construction on the street. Right. It was all a builder, and every homeowner got their home around the same time, got the keys at the same time, and the whole street's for sale right now, and so, you know, there were 750, 720, 705, and we set the reserve at 700, and it pulled 680 in the auction. I said, look at Brian, I think it's worth 700 all day long. And he called me this morning. He goes, can you get the buyer back at 680? One just went up at 649. The other one just sold for 675, and the buyer took it at 680, right? But it was, it's crazy how volatile. But you want to talk about, you know, a bit of a, you know, all the emotions for sellers, you know, and we'll never put pressure on a seller to sell. And, you know, I genuinely felt it was going to pull 700. But
once it's marked as sold on your site, there's still a bit of a due diligence period at that point, usually for financing or anything. Or are they just saying it's no conditions only? What's kind of the play there? Because you said you've got to pre-qualify the buyers, right?
So
like you're asking for that as well.
And you pre-inspect the homes.
Yeah. So everyone's waiving the finance clause, and they're submitting their pre-approval, and they're submitting the pre-approval prior to us activating them on the site. We don't want people coming on and bidding on houses that aren't qualified to bid on houses, and they do, however, have all the time in the world to bring in their own inspectors. You know, even though we have provided inspection and a warranty, we have had numerous buyers bring in their own inspectors.
But that would presumably...
So they are waiving finance.
In advance of the actual bidding day. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so ultimately as a seller, you've got that appeal of once your home is sold, it's a done deal. Yeah.
If I don't have a buyer's agent, I want to see the house, who's letting me through?
We have a full team. We'll run open houses. We'll do private showings, everything. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So from the buyer experience, they log onto your platform. They presumably input some level of credentials, their pre-approval, et cetera, confirm their ID, right?
Yeah.
And then they express interest in a property, or like, do they have
Yeah.
to be like granted access to the bidding room for that property at a certain point in time?
No, everyone can see the property. Okay, like you can go on the site and see the bidding happening live on anything without even setting up a profile.
And what is the
But if
website?
you-
Just for people listening.
Unreserved.com.
Simple enough. Yep.
And so if you found a property that you liked and you wanted to, it'll ask you to get verified, and you'll just enter your information and then you'll submit your pre-approval. So you could upload it or you could email it in to a rep. So they'll have their mortgage broker forward it to us. One of the
Question
other.
though, will that pre-approval have to indicate a number because they haven't submitted a bid yet? Right? Like,
The pre-approval will have pre-approval will be like, I'm approved up to $700,000 with X amount down, and so we're verifying them in the system up to a certain number. Even though the bidding might be at 450, 500, they can go up to
and sorry, just
700.
can buyers see each other's conditions? Like, okay, this buyer's submitting this amount of deposit. What can they see?
No, everyone's agreeing to the very similar terms and conditions prior to placing a bid. So the seller has a closing date range. So buyers are agreeing to that closing date range. Buyers have all submitted a pre-approval in advance. You know, some buyers might be approved for $1 million, 800, 700. All that means is their bidding capability would tap out at a certain number. You know, but there's zero correlation. There's zero correlation between what someone's pre-approval is and what they're willing to pay on a home.
Well, I was gonna say, so you're saying if let's say I submit my pre-approval at 700, your system won't let me bid over 700?
Correct.
Ooh, that's cool. I like
That's cool. I do like that. But what happens if you're like, I really want this house and I will throw down more cash? My pre-approval is at 700, but I'll throw down.
Well,
an
then you
extra
call your
50.
mortgage broker and be like, hey, I'm going to do this now on those terms. Send me a pre-approval that has,
It happens all the time. It happens all the time where the auction's 5 minutes away from ending and the person's calling and they're submitting their cash balance
Right,
in
so
their
you can add
bank. Can
other
you
stuff.
up me for another 25,000 or
They take off the watch and they just
and
throw
so
it
we
down on the table, like,
we can
and my Rolex.
Exactly. And you know what, agents and you know they'll do that. They'll say, pre-approved. We'll allow agents to verify their own clients. We were like, you know, if you want to verify your client, you just tell us what you want them to bid up to amount. So a lot of time agents will sandbag the pre-approval, 700, and then they're outbid, okay, up them to 750, you know, and
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because you're sort of showing your hand a little bit to the seller. Now, if the reserve is met, does the seller obligated to sell that house?
100%.
Cool.
Interesting.
Cool. I like this. I like it.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking. So, what would you say the advantage is for, like, if you had to break it down in like a couple points, what the advantage would be for a buyer? So transparency on the bid, and then I feel like I'm used to here where we have so many conditions. That's why I guess in my head I don't know if Atlantic Canada is so down.
It sounds to a layperson like, well, gosh, as a buyer, if I can't choose my closing date, and you know, I maybe have to waive inspection and waive financing, am I putting myself at risk? But what you're saying is you're actually kind of putting the onus up front to prove financing, and you can do an inspection beforehand.
Makes it a lot more clear.
Right, exactly. And so from a buyer's perspective, transparency is one thing which is needed, but it's that total fairness, right? Where if there's a way to do it that's more fair, we will change it tomorrow. But everyone has that fair and equal opportunity. And so that's something that, you know, you see it all the time in the traditional model where, you know, you're losing deals, and there's such a waste of time and resources where I just wish there was, a friend of mine lost a house yesterday to their agent. Their agent lost it, and, you know, all of a sudden it was the listing agent. They sold for $5,000 more, and it was, it was done through the same brokerage, you know, and
Right,
you know,
right.
and that stuff happens all the time, and it's just that lack of fairness.
Or at least the
And-
perceived lack of fairness, like the buyer feels slighted. Yeah.
100%. And, you know, that's always been my experience in real estate, you know, where, you know, there's lots of times where even years ago where I'd be bidding on a house, there'd be nobody there. And the second, you know, you had that offer and there's an offer on the house and, you know, where do you want to increase your offer? And there's another buyer. And, you know, it was just that total lack of transparency, and along with that perceived lack of fairness, which results in a lack of trust in the industry. And, you know, you guys, agents have been taking it on the chin out there, and it's not your fault. It's the boards that make these rules.
Yeah. And I think it's everyone trusts their own agent, but no one seems to trust other agents. And this is the kind of sort of situation we find ourselves in a little bit. I'm just always interested in the actual practical way this operates. So is there a bid increase minimum? Like, or are people just adding $5? Like, can you set that, and how much discretion?
Yeah, the minimum bid is $2,500. All right, so
Okay.
that's the lowest you can lose a house.
Right.
We don't want somebody losing a house by $100, $500.
Yeah.
So the least someone will lose a house by is $2,500. You know, most people will do it. We've had people come on and jump the bids by $100,000, try to bring the auction to a halt. You know, where
Strategy,
people
yeah.
don't get momentum and stuff. So everyone has their own strategies and stuff, but it's open and it's fair.
But so are there some times where, you know, presumably there's a clock going down, 10, 9, 8, and people are throwing in last numbers. Like, is there a risk that someone's like, I'm trying to get my last one in, and they don't quite get it in?
It's more time added, but they're not.
So there's bid extensions,
What?
right? So
Oh my God, I love
unlike
it.
eBay
eBay.
that doesn't have bid
That's a
extensions,
thing on
right?
eBay
So
now? I haven't bought anything on eBay in a while, so crazy.
So I don't know if eBay has bid extensions, but we have bid extensions, and where you know, people will try to wait to the last second, and they'll bid, and then it gets extended for 5 minutes. And what we recently had to do was after 20 minutes of an auction extension, we drop it down to 3 minutes because people they play chicken with each other. And
They
it's
wait till
painful to
19:30
watch to try
again.
and-
And yeah.
Yeah, and you're just like, this is gonna drag. We've had auctions drag on for an hour and a half after,
Right.
you know, and so it gets fatiguing.
Right on. We've got to start wrapping it up here. I've got a question. Like, long term, where do you see yourself integrating with organized real estate, CREA, and all that? Is the idea to hopefully be adopted into that system, or are you trying to run parallel or even be a replacement to it? Call it realtor.ca.
Yeah, so great question. You know, when we were starting this, we had fully anticipated on becoming a brokerage, only to find out that we'd be charged.
Oh, I
and
thought you were going to say
shut
that
down
it sucks to own a brokerage.
Yeah, and so you know, the only way that we could run a transparent process was to kind of go against the grain, and in many ways, it would have been easier for us to be a brokerage if transparent bidding was allowed. You know, the only way we could do it was through this auction exemption, and you know, so right now there's a lot of pressure on the government to close the auction exemption from realtors.
Yeah, but do you worry about that as a business who is trying to offer an alternative model if the organized real estate then incorporates that same model or some variation of it under their umbrella?
Well, we welcome it. We hope. I would love nothing more than to completely do away with blind bidding. Would love nothing more. You know, and the biggest problem with blind bidding, and you know, every single agent. You know, sorry, I shouldn't say every single agent, but you know, from my experience, you know, this debate where, you know, blind bidding brings more money and transparent bidding brings less money, you know, and that's a whole debate on its own. But the problem with that theory is when you're going into a seller's home and saying, look, we're going to go blind. A buyer is going to make a mistake and overpay. We're going to club a baby seal. And you know, so the problem with that is that seller is also a buyer.
Right.
And now you're taking that seller and saying, okay, what happened to that buyer isn't going to
Now let's
happen to
go
you
out there
because
and
you
shop.
can trust
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's that you're starting a relationship off on the wrong foot.
Yeah.
There's that lack of trust, and buyers are sellers, sellers are buyers. And
Like, are you micro focused on your sales result or macro focused on like
actual
fair
system as a
marketplace?
whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do from our experience, we did a pretty big sample size from when we bought in the spring and sold, and other than a few that I knowingly made mistakes on, it was overwhelmingly in our favor. Mind you, we did staging and made them show well. But
And the market continued to support you. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Exactly, right? So, we don't see a difference. What we do see a difference on is the whole the entire experience.
Well, I mean, this is super neat. I'm interested. I think the market in general is changing. Chandler and I talk about this all the time. Like, I think the
that's
model
where it's headed.
the model's needed to change too. Like you said, it's not a trusted system or industry by any means by a lot of people. A lot of people don't love it. They're very stressed about the process. So if things like this come into play, there's value. But I also see that I still think like you said, there still needs to be a human connection on some level. This can never be to the
100%.
point where a robot's like, this is your house, sweet, because you still got to have someone go and get a true market value and make some of the improvements and do that. So there's going to be a place for people in this.
I always think about this stuff when things are changing so dramatically. It's like, well, what if no system existed and we were to start again today? What system would we have? And it's more likely to be an open, transparent one than a system whereby it's like, oh, there's a house for sale. It's like, cool. How much does it cost? It's like, well, we'll put a price on it. It's like, oh, I'll buy it for that price. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. It's like, it doesn't work that way. Like, how much do I have to pay? It's like, you have to guess. And like that seems, and I'm being kind of silly here, but like, if we were replacing the system new, that's probably not the one we would all choose. We would likely choose something that's more transparent and has some sort of bidding process that you could actually make a fully informed decision.
Honestly, too, I think these systems are going to come into play more because I think realistically our inventory issue that we're facing now is going to be more consistent moving forward, just with the way the Canadian population's going and our actual construction pace. Like, I think housing...
What's it, 400,000 people a year and 200,000 built homes?
Yeah, exactly. I think for a lot of years now, we're going to be outpacing with people than we are relative to houses. And so I think this concept will be a lot more prevalent and more required for people to feel comfortable in buying. I think before, like I was watching a thing about the Sears catalog, they sold homes for $2,500 and people were slapping them up, no big deal, and they could fill the inventory in 2 weeks. I don't know if that day will ever come back, to be honest, unless we go to container homes, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah. There's something to be said for modular, but yeah.
No, I think you're right, and I do think the recent drop is a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. The media has a tendency to scare a lot of buyers, but we are due for a bit of a correction and a more balanced market, which I think will help everyone.
Yeah. No, I was going to ask you as a business owner and someone obviously who's now heavily in the real estate space, what you thought about the impact of these rate increases. We're up a bunch and we're going to be up another 50 points here shortly. Anything you want to speculate that and maybe even as just a business owner, what that means for you?
I do think the market is a bit oversold. When you look at how low interest rates are overall, and if you still want to go a variable rate, I think it'll pay out greatly in the long run. As opposed to come in as a fixed rate right now.
I'm the same mind. I actually want to get a hoodie made that says I'm sticking with 100%. Variable. I was thinking about getting that hoodie made. Yeah.
And I don't remember like in 2008 when gas prices went crazy when it hit like $150 a barrel back in 2008. Everybody was getting rid of their SUVs and paying a premium for these fuel miser cars, and in the U.S.
SUVs
and then everybody came back. It was that knee-jerk reaction. So I do think this is a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, but there's still tons of buyers out there. They're just a little more cautious, and they're taking advantage of the opportunity right now. It's great.
Yeah, we can try to hammer demand all we want until we fix supply. It's not going to change. So,
Sold all my houses and bought a Tesla. I made the wrong decision.
all right, we're going to wrap it up here. Thanks so much. I think this is super interesting. I'm excited to check out the platform. People can go on to unreserved.com.
When are we expecting to see you? When do you think you're going to go across Canada? When are we going to see out east? When are we going to see out west?
You know what? Ontario is such a big market, and
Yeah.
we're gonna spend most of this money we raised.
In Ontario.
The next round we could raise between 60 and 100 million, and that'll be
Nice.
used to expand across Canada.
And you said you did $170 million worth of transactions in the last 10 months?
Correct.
And that's about 150 units, give or take?
Yeah. Or sorry,
Nice.
Almost 200 units. Sorry,
Almost 200 units.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's not
amazing.
small as it is, right? Like you're off and running. So thank you again so much for joining us. We're super pumped.
Thank
to
you
hear
guys for
how it
having me.
goes.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. And we'll see you out east eventually.
Yeah.
I'm telling people it's not if, it's when, right? So, thanks again.
Thanks, Ryan.
Anytime, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for watching the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. Don't forget to subscribe. But also check us out on Instagram and TikTok. You can find all the links below. Thanks again for checking us out.
When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.